The hidden risks of Amazon FBA. Unfortunately, there are lots of hidden risks and places that you can lose a ton of money that gurus and most people on social media aren't talking about. And you'll only really learn of those things when you get into it yourself and either find yourself losing a lot of money, finding yourself having a failed business because you can't get over the hurdle of losing some money, or it's just a big hit and your whole model of your business doesn't make sense. Well, in this video, I'm gonna talk about all those things, and as somebody that's run Amazon FBA businesses and actually decided to set them down for a very specific reason, I'm gonna get into all of the negatives that can happen and why you might not wanna do it. And I don't wanna discourage you, I'm just gonna talk about some of the things that no one seems to be talking about that happen and are very costly. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It's very free to do. Very, very free. I assure you, it's very free to do. And you might just learn something interesting that will help you change your life. Okay, so whether you're in Amazon FBA right now or whether you're considering it, and maybe we should back up because there are probably a lot of newbies here, Amazon FBA is fulfillment by Amazon. And basically what it is you have a product that you're selling, you send it into Amazon's warehouse, they distribute it around the US, and then they fulfill any orders that come through for you. They package, ship, and send your goods to your customers. They do all the customer interaction. They deal with refunds and all those things. And you pay them a fee and they take a percent cut on your product and you hopefully make a percent profit, let's say, off that. And it cuts out all the work behind what you're doing. Yeah, it shortens a little bit of work, but in the grand scheme of things, once you become successful enough to make a living, you're doing enough inventory management and supply chain management that it's a full-time gig anyways. Regardless of that fact, there are some, let's say, very costly things that can happen when starting an Amazon FBA business and growing and scaling it. And these things don't get smaller. They actually happen more when you're scaling. So it's something to think about. And most people, again, I did a lot of deep diving on the internet and the interweb of free information, and no one was talking about it when I got into FBA years ago. And no one is still talking about it. And it's one of the primary reasons I stopped. And, I've been dancing around it. Let's talk about it. So the biggest item here, and there are a lot of problems with Amazon FBA. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of problems. The biggest problem, though, that I've found is issues with inventory and inventory damage, returns, or missing inventory. So that sounds crazy, but it happens enough. So let me give you some situations. One, because you're housing all of your inventory in Amazon, it's up to them to control its quality. I have had times where I've shipped my packages, and when you're trying to ship to Amazon, you're trying to get everything tight as possible. And what ends up happening is it might get slightly damaged in shipping. Even if it doesn't damage the goods, now I have damaged boxes and packaging that when a customer opens it, there's still some, it doesn't look as professional. Maybe that's on me to package better, but when heavy boxes, because some of my products are heavy, fall off a forklift, it's out of my control and that's all my product. The other turn side is I've also had Amazon damage goods, but not recognize and tell me that they were damaged. And I didn't find out until we had some customers buy products, return it. I lost money on the return process. I obviously didn't know that I had damaged goods, had to reset my whole thing. I lost all the money for the goods itself, and I started getting negative reviews because Amazon was sending out products that were really not okay to be sending to customers. So that happens. I've had inventory go missing, as Amazon receives their packages, and they spread it across their warehouse. From time to time, things get misplaced. This sounds crazy, and some of you might not have experienced this, but I was doing enough volume over many different SKUs, many different products, that it happened to me a couple times. And then on top of that, just issues with refunds where the threshold of refunds and the relationship with how Amazon deals with refunds really aren't in the interest of the seller. They're in the interest of the buyer, because Amazon knows that all of the negatives that come around a refund gets pushed to the seller, me, you, who's warehousing the goods through them. And their policy for refunds is really customer oriented, which maybe Amazon has to do as a business, but you end up losing a lot of money. The short answer is, running a normal business, you have to have some redundancy around issues like delivery, shipment issues, quality stuff, and you have a redundancy. You build a percentage into your total price of your product that over time it kind of pays for and keeps up with the stuff that goes wrong over time as you're selling enough volume of goods. That percentage was 7 times higher with Amazon. And I can tell you that from the numbers with running my business, consulting with other businesses, It's not always 7 times. I'd say it's between 5 and 8 times, depending on the type of business, the type of volume you're doing. And it's not like it's like 700,000%, but we're talking about with my normal business, it's like 0.3%. And I think with one of my products, when I isolated the product, I was up at like 4 or 5%, where I had to actually factor in 4 or 5% increase in product cost to make up for the negative that was happening. And that's significant. That could be the difference between me exceeding the competition or not. And more importantly, it's 4 or 5% that I'm not seeing on the profit side anymore. So as you price your products, you might have a 20% margin of profit. If you lose 5% of that out of the blue because you're not paying attention to all your losses, let's say over time, all of a sudden your 15% profit margin, that's a reduction in 25% of the dollar bills that go into your bank account, right? It's something to be very aware of, and I think that is the biggest problem with Amazon FBA right now, is that it's very hard to be competitive with volume when you have issues that, again, they're not big, but they're just big enough that they really play a difference in how much money you're making from your product sales, and it really drives you to sell on your own platform. And ultimately, that's what I ended up doing, because that difference in 0.3 and 4 or 5% was enough money where it was like, it's pretty significant with what I take home. It's like paying a month of mortgage or something like that. It's a significant dollar amount for me. So I just said, I'll take on the challenge and sell through my own platform. For sure, my volume of sales is much, much lower, but it doesn't have to be higher, because with a higher sales volume, with a lower profit margin, it kind of equaled out, right? And ultimately, dealing with less volume is less time for me. And if I'm making the same amount of money, maybe again, my total revenue has changed, but my net profit income is just the same. So that's something to think about as you get into Amazon FBA. There are plenty of other things to talk about. I wanted to keep the video short and concise, something that no one seems to be talking about. And it's a problem that Amazon, it's not like it's a big widespread problem. It's a problem that you will encounter with USPS, UPS, and FedEx. They will lose packages with your business, right? Things happen. It just seems to happen from data, whether it's my businesses or businesses that I've consulted with, more with Amazon FBA. And it's just inherently the way they run their business. And it's not a bad thing. It's not something that needs to get fixed. It's just something that you need to calculate in how you're doing business. And maybe Amazon FBA is still what's best for you. Just know that this is there at the get-go and just plan it into how you run your business. And hopefully you'll succeed. But I wanted to talk about it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you there.